Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with legendary jazz saxophonist Azar Lawrence. His first professional gigs came abroad when he was 17 years old with Clarke and Muddy Waters. From there, he would become a sideman to McCoy Tyner, Miles Davis, Freddie Hubbard, and Woody Shaw, and he learned quite a bit. And ultimately, he grew up in a very prolific era of transcendence in jazz that to this day has stood the ultimate test of time. And so is he. His latest 2018 CD, Elementals, is charting very well and ties together all the incredible music milestones of his career, and there is so much more to do, and he has plenty to say about all of it. So get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Again, good morning, and hey, thank you. It's an honor to speak with you. Thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, I appreciate the opportunity, too, as well.
How do you feel about Elementals? It's doing really well. It's, again, another great sound. How do you feel about this album?
I feel really strong about it. I mean, you know, none of the albums I've done, I don't throw them together, but there is an element of artistry coming from, what I mean by that is that I go ahead and meditate on the concept, comes through meditation a lot of times, and I feel that we hit the target with this musically and conceptually. I mean, it's an elusive thing when we say the target, but the goal being to produce a music that is uplifting, you know.
Let me go back to the beginning of your life here. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Los Angeles, California, and raised in Los Angeles.
What was it like growing up in L.A.? What was your childhood like, and how did you get involved with jazz?
Childhood was just fabulous. Fabulous parents, rest in peace, rest their souls. They really were dedicated. My mother, being a pianist herself and a school teacher, but she also taught piano, but she wanted one of her two children to be a musician. She wasn't able to fully pursue it as a career, which she wanted to, but her university professor told her, you know, she was from Oklahoma, that he was going to fail her if she decided to pursue that, being an achiever as she was, she doubled down and, got her master's and on that kind of stuff. So she was a sixth grade school teacher and taught lessons in the evening. And, my father was so strong in terms of his entrepreneurship, shall I say, so dedicated as a father. Any instrument or whatever I needed, or whatever we needed, he could provide it. So it was actually a blessing to have come up with in this family, the full support musically. And to get to the jazz, it was, I was in the USC's junior orchestra at 5 years old. My brother was 10, we both played played violin at that time. And I was in the USC Junior Orchestra. From there, about 8 years old, we were fortunate to have a pool and live up in a place called Baldwin Hills, which was, and is elite, but it was very elite at the time. We were one of about 3 black families in the whole area. A lot of my friends were surfers, and we surfed. My brother, is a surfer, and he's 5 years older than me. The thing is, though, I used to have to hang out. He was burdened with hanging out with me all the time, so of course I surfed as well, more so body surfing than board surfing. But what happened is, my father had a friend who used to come by and play his flute as he laid by the pool. And one day he brought an alto saxophone, and when I heard him play that, and I said, "Oh, that's it." Because I was getting older and my voice was dropping, and I was hearing something a little deeper than the violin. And I thought about, well, maybe I'll go to the viola or cello. But then, of course, I just didn't hear it. But when I heard the alto saxophone, my father quickly got me a saxophone. I started on alto, and from there, it progressed to one day I was kind of guided to try the tenor saxophone, which I did. But along the way, in the last year of high school, I started performing with the Horst Tapscott Big Band Orchestra, but I was playing baritone saxophone, and I stood next to Arthur Blythe and Horst Tapscott and some really great guys in there. So that was through that connection to the Horst Tapscott Orchestra that opened up a whole community of jazz players here in Los Angeles. I met Reggie Golson, Benny Golson's son, and he and I became best friends, and he would take me to his house, and I was able to speak with Benny Golson, almost daily. And also Reggie had a very extensive musical library, which that's all we did is listen, and he really enriched my appreciation and knowledge of music through this large catalog of LPs, vinyl at the time, that he would play, and tell me, explain who it was, and then also my mother was a big jazz fan herself. When we were just really small, she was. I remember John Coltrane and My Favorite Things when it hit the radio. She had, the jazz station on all the time. That's how I kind of became developed an appreciation of it. And from there, it was through Reggie Golson that I met Elvin Jones. Elvin invited me to a rehearsal when he was playing out in Los Angeles at the Lighthouse. When I went to the rehearsal, I think it must have been that Dave Liebman had left Elvin's quartet, which included Gene Perla on bass, Steve Wilson on saxophone, and of course Elvin, Dave Liebman at the time. And I played a couple of songs with him, and afterwards Elvin said, "You with me, aren't you? I have a plane ticket for you." So, I was just 19. And so I lived with Elvin and Keiko, his wife, for about 2.5 years as we performed. And from there, I went with McCoy Tyner. Alphonse Mouzon, rest his soul, rest in peace, came down to the Village Vanguard to hear Elvin. He told me, he said, "Listen, man, I think you're the sound that we need for the, for the group." The next weekend, or the next week, they were playing at the Village Vanguard, and he invited me to come by. I went by there, and McCoy knew all about it, and I guess he had spoken with him, and he asked me if I wanted to play and sit in. I said, yeah, and then afterwards, he said he was really excited. He got my telephone number, and the next day, I got a call from McCoy, and he said, "Man, would you want to join the group?" I said, "Oh, most certainly," because musically, I loved Elvin, and Elvin was just such a phenomenon. Just the peak experiences of playing with Elvin Jones, there's no words to even speak of it, because his playing was an orchestra of sounds, and you could hear the melodic, depictions of music through his rhythms and tonalities the way he tuned his drums, and this whole concept. So you could hear the harmonic value even in his rhythmic performances. Whereas once I became acquainted with McCoy Tyner, it was the same concept, is that the hammers of the piano were the drums that he was playing, and of course the strings, the melodic, amplifications. So anyway, I joined McCoy, and first album we did was the Enlightenment Suite, which was down in Montreux, Switzerland, and it was interesting. After I was offered a record deal with Fantasy Records, McCoy Tyner himself was on one of the subdivision labels, which was Milestones, and I was offered a deal, and which I took, and was happy to get a chance to record some of my compositions. And so my first album, entitled Bridge into the New Age, was just re-released last year by Concord Records, who has now assumed the catalog from Fantasy. You know, so Bridging to the New Age, which had featured Woody Shaw on trumpet, Billy Hart on drums, you know, Gene Carn vocals, and a whole cast of great individuals. So I did 2 other albums for them, and actually an unreleased album that featured Elvin Jones, Ron Carter, and Albert Daly. Yeah, that's how I got started there.
Beautiful. Yeah. So from the beginning, you've obviously been destined for music. Were you nervous in the beginning, or did you know this was going to be your life? This was what your life was going to be?
Seems as though, well, no, initially, it's interesting. I did not even take any classes in high school of music except for performing arts, a performance band called Jazz Workshop, you know, which was so helpful and so wonderful. Dr. Simpson was our teacher, and he had played with Tommy Dorsey in that band, and he had such knowledge, and the way he passed it on to us was just really phenomenal. You know, but I thought I was going to be either some type of, I had a science major, even into college, which I went 2 years to college, but I maintained a science major, and I thought I was going to be a doctor, or something of that nature. And, yeah, it was interesting. I guess in the long run, the trigonometry and calculus and all that helped me try to decipher some of these musical, geometrical combinations.
So during this time that you were coming into your own and learning from masters like Elvin and McCoy and Miles Davis and cats like that, did you know that you were in this fertile ground of jazz, that there was so much going on around you that was going to influence literally generations forever from here on out?
Well, I didn't know the projection of how it was going to influence everyone, but I mean, it was thus definitely a blessing to be immersed into that time period where everyone, like you said, the masters were there and present, and I was immersed in in school with them. I mean, how many people can really say that they've played with McCoy Tyner 5.5 years, Elvin and 3 years? I mean, lived with, and Miles Davis, and recorded. I mean, the beautiful thing was, I was able to record with them. It's not just hearsay, the recordings speak for themselves. Woody Shaw was on my album initially, but then he called me to play on his Moon Train album, which became a very significant project as well. But yeah, it was definitely a highlight full of peak experiences, musical experiences, like I said, with some of the people that have made jazz what it is. I mean, those names I just spoke of, Miles Davis, I learned so much from Miles. And McCoy, I mean, every night with McCoy for 5.5 years, I just heard God coming through, and being expressed through the soul of an individual on through this instrument. Phew, boy, I was too young to hear John Coltrane live. I asked McCoy one time, I said, man, how can you play with me, a saxophonist of my level, after playing with John Coltrane? And he said, well, I think you and John felt the same way about music. So, and it was just such a high compliment. And I think we do and did feel the same way about music, because I listened to John a lot with Reggie, but I never picked my instrument up and tried to mimic him, to play what he played, play his solos, or anything of that nature. So it just kind of came naturally. It's just how I hear it. I hear it, but and some of the textures and scales and modes and stuff, of course, from playing with McCoy, I kind of got it honestly.
Yeah. Have you always been comfortable being compared to Coltrane? Has that been something that you've just been okay with?
There's not much higher honor than that. I take it as a compliment, an honor. I mean, because again, like I said, it's just, something that came to me through birth. I mean, from birth, and I feel like there's a royal family, and I feel like I'm part of it.
Absolutely.
And I am part of it. I am part of it. I mean, after, living with Elvin Jones for 2.5 years, 3 years. And, actually I went back with him, after, McCoy for a minute and, after the Miles Davis, stint. And, I also touched on, things with Earth, Wind and Fire. I wrote 3 songs on their Pilot album. Maurice White, a fabulous, not only composer and a producer and artist, but a jazz drummer himself from Ramsey Lewis orchestra, band or orchestra. We had a great connection, he and I as well, and it was interesting that because once he and I connected, I was already writing. I was doing things with Chuck Jackson and Patrice Banks, who's better known as Chocolate from Grand Central Station. And we had a writing team, the 3 of us, and I was known for the strong musical tracks. I would put the tracks together. They would come by and grab them, and Chuck was doing a lot of producing during that time. I even had the great honor of having 4 songs on the Stanley Turner team. I think it's Coming Home album or Going Home album, and also was honored to play piano on the songs that they chose that I had written. So we did Irene Carr, Lynn Woods. We did several major artists at the time. How it brings to today is that all those years of cultivation and fertilization from the experiences of being and playing with the names, some of the names that I've mentioned, and it's been 45 years at that level. I'm proud to say. And Elementals, the album Elementals is a culmination and expression of all of those experiences. The great musicians, Benito Gonzalez on piano, Jeff Littleton on bass, Marvin Smitty Smith on drums, Greg Poirier on a guitar, Orrin Waters, sang on African Chant, Manungo Jackson and Mayuto Correa were the percussionists, great cast. I can tell you personally that it get much better than that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I kind of wanted to piggyback off Elementals and ask, that it's kind of a culmination of all of these legends that you've played with over the years. And my question is this: you've been around so many legendary players, and this is something that a lot of people don't get to experience in a lifetime, from Miles Davis to Freddie Hubbard, Woody Shaw, McCoy Tyner. My question is this: the world's always going to have a perception of who these people are, even who you are. And, they've made movies about Miles. There's been all these biopics and all these things. That you were in the cauldron of that scene. And my question is this: what is something that's similar with all of these guys? What is it about these guys that made them so historically spectacular and have made such a wave that no one will ever forget what they did on this planet?
Their greatness was stamped through time spent in development, and then also the gifts that that they were born with. These guys were gifted. Each one of them were gifted and had spent hours developing their craft. And then also during that time, what's different now is that we would go even with Elvin and McCoy, Miles. I mean, it was nothing to say that we'd travel on Monday, Tuesday through Sunday we would be performing somewhere, 2 sets a night, sometimes 3 sets a night, and then we'd travel on Monday and go and do it all over again, back to back to back all year, maybe with a month off, at the most. That's all we. I think one time, a couple of times we had 6 weeks off after just, 3 months on. And that was twice a year to Europe, once a year to Japan, Canada, and the United States every year, just back to back to back to back to back. And that is a great way to, become who you are. I mean, doing what you do, every night and, having the opportunity to put into actualization, the theories and the concepts and to develop your inner concepts, what you're hearing, become yourself, musically. And, back then, those guys had the opportunities, and we all had the opportunities to do that, in the battle, in the heat of battle, so to speak, every night,
Yeah.
Hey, instruments breaking down. I mean, if you could, some of those Don Coltrane albums, you could hear, especially the live ones, you could hear the fight that, obviously McCoy would win with those pianos he was playing, some of those pianos, and most of the time we had good ones, but a couple of times we ran into some pianos that McCoy sounded great each time. No matter what he was playing, he sounded great. And that kind of thing, of that time period, I was blessed, and I feel so fortunate to have experienced that, because that 6 nights a week, 1 day off, I don't see that. I mean, that's not, at best, if you have 4 nights, that's, a good thing. I've been fortunate to experience 4 nights, but the 6 nights is special. But, I'm grateful for everything because, I was blessed to have come through that period of development. And, it was a great period.
Absolutely. And it's very evident talking to you and just seeing how your life has unfolded that things have gone pretty well. So my question is this. What else do you want to do? Are there players that you want to play with? Are there albums that you want to make? Regions of the world you want to go to? What do you want to do?
Definitely have some new concepts, new groups to form. Right now, my group is called the Azar Lawrence Experience, and I've expanded it to a 7-piece group. I have a vocalist, percussionist, and then on top of my quintet, usually either trombone or trumpet. Steve Teray has been playing quite a bit with me. He and I met on the Moon Train Woody Shaw project, and have been friends ever since. Some great pianists are playing with me from time to time. So the Azar Lawrence Experience it's hard to put into words. We're playing music of elementals and a combination of that and bridge into the new age. Some of the music from the 70s, which is actually sounds very fresh right now and new, and it is new. A lot of people that are of age and are listening have never heard that music, and so we're playing some of that music and with excitement and glee, shall I say. We're so happy to do it, and only because it's I don't know, seems like the energies have come around to where it's fresh now. That music is fresh. That those albums I recorded then have become fresh. But not only that, they were fresh then, but the music is fresh now. I feel good playing it. But I have some new concepts. I have a new group of mine that it's called Electric Azar. I'm working with some of the modern concepts, modern technology, that's offered today, electronics. So, I was a rock and roll, I've played with some of the rock group Boston guys, and we had projects, Fran Sheehan and Barry Goodrow, Sibby, the drummer who I think has passed on, bless his soul. But then guys from Fog Hat and the Jay Giles Band, and we'd have a history of rock and roll once every year where we'd play a concert at the Swampscott, Massachusetts high school, where Francine and Barry Goodrow went to school, so they'd give back there, and guys from Stones, all those rock legends would come and play with us for two hours straight. Then the next day we'd go down to a place called the China Club in New York, and Paul Schaefer from David Letterman, he would come and play with Elliot Rando. So at any rate, though, but before that, even before I went with Elvin Jones, I was with the Watts 103rd Street Band and the Charles Wright and his Express Yourself hit, and also with Eric Burton from the Animals as he formed a group called War. I was on the very ground floor of that before Elvin swooped me up and took me out. Cool. But yes, so the Electric Czar concept is one of the new the next albums I'm doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. You come from a world, you're kind of in a unique position in the historical timeline of jazz of seeing all of these legends, but like you said, you're developing new concepts. So my question is this: how important is it for us as curators of the jazz story to keep this torch burning as brightly as possible, from the kids that are in college now, to cats like you, and to anybody in the compendium of jazz, to keep this story going and making it as strong as ever?
Yeah, it's so important because a lot of the historical message that has been passed down through music, Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker and Prez and people that are just, from the horn player standpoint, on through the pianists, the legendary pianists, people that have dedicated their lives are actually passing a message to us of dedication and upliftment in terms of how proficient they have become artistry-wise. That itself is a message. In other words, be great at whatever you do. Be the best at whatever you do. And you can do that, but it takes time and dedication and focus. It's like a lot of people, everybody has great ideas, but it's the people that hold one idea and expound on it that, become so-called great at what they do. And so this music has been carrying a message through time and of people's sufferings and people's happiness and joys as well. Our music, the Azar Lawrence Experience music, and the music that I choose to do, the messages of upliftment, spiritual upliftment, thinking, get off the bottom rung, think, high thinking, let's do the best we can. Let's get out of the gutter. Let's stay, let's think about how we can move humanity forward. How can we uplift and help each other and be good to our brothers and sisters and uplift them and move that whole community concept forward. And that's how elementals, the word elementals is actually speaking about the nature spirits that govern each one of the four elements and giving it's a tribute to them that invisibly to our eyes do their work that keeps that going, which actually has so much to do with how our life is maintained. Try that out. Let's try it without rain for a while and see how that works.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Amen. Let me ask you very simply. You've given so much to jazz. Why do you love jazz?
Well, I love all kind of music. I'm remembering that I'm a classical violinist at base. It was a symphony. The USC, University of Southern California Junior Orchestra, it was a symphony. And so I have an appreciation for music, but then there's music out of Africa that I have an affinity for, and that's what, I think I shared with McCoy and Alvin, and be listening to their playing, and John Coltrane through those individuals I just named, but let's call it jazz. Through the jazz idiom, I can express this Afro, concept that has been passed down through generations, through my heritage. Speak, to the masses in that manner through those tools that I've been given. That I can decipher, through my connection with this Afro-American experience, that I'm living.
Let me ask you this. Everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you know yourself best. So who do you think you are?
Oh, I know I am. I'm Azar, the philosophical, but in actual movement and practice of spiritual concepts, healthy living concepts, upliftment of oneself, knowing to ultimately know thyself. And that's who Azar is, through music, uplifting humanity the best he can, or consciously endeavoring to help all of us with the vibratory emission of, this music on a higher vibratory level each and every time that we do it. We try to keep the music uplifting, and when it touches us, the goosebumps, it tickles your atoms, and you're better when you're finished, and you feel better, and you are better, and it's just like people that stop and think about what my last album, The Seeker, means, and each and every one of us is a seeker of knowledge and truth, and we live in a manner which allows us to discover who we are, and then after we do make that discovery, then we have to live what we find. We have to live now who we are once we make the discovery of who we are. And those kind of concepts, and the elementals concepts, some people say, well, it's not elemental. It's not the elements. It's elementals. It's speaking of the personage, an elemental, the elementals, and, start to, think about that and, scratch their heads and say, let me, pick up a book and see if I'll Google that and see what that comes up as, and do some investigation and, see how that concept plays out and how that works with the music and in an upliftment type of fashion. How does that impact us? The concept of elementals. How does that work with us? How do the nature spirits, their rapport with us when we hear music that brings, goosebumps to us? What does that mean? And does that, is that because the music has lifted our beings to a level that we can have a brief rapport with higher element, evolved entities that invisibly come close to us and help uplift us? Those type of concepts, not to get too philosophical and too deep, but that type of inspiration to motivate people to dig a little deeper beneath the surface and see what's going on under there.
I dig it.
That's who Azar is. Is.
I dig it. And I think you've spread a lot of good on this planet through your message and your music. Azar, thank you for taking some time out. It's been an honor to speak with you today.
It's been my honor too, brother, and thank you, and thanks for keeping this music moving forward.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Los Angeles, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Azar for his time, his music, and his prolific stature in jazz. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.